So a podcast lawyer protects you from a lot of the legal parts of podcasting that we literally never think about.
But you said something interesting there. You said a podcast lawyer. So I've never actually heard of that and I've never thought about that, but it makes total sense. What is a podcast lawyer and why would I need one?
So a podcast lawyer protects you from a lot of the legal parts of podcasting that we literally never think about. And I didn't meet Gordon until my fifth year podcasting.
Wow.
And I didn't realize I was doing a lot of legal stuff for a long time.
Okay, this is good. This is good content right here. So what is the legal stuff that we're all doing on podcasts that we shouldn't be doing?
Number one, big mistake people make is not having a guest release form. Right. So if I come on your show and you put out the episode, I could come back and sue you because you didn't have me sign a release form saying that you were going to post me everywhere on social media and stuff. Like a guest release form is something that you need for most states when you do a podcast interview.
Okay. So my team's literally jotting all this stuff down. Okay. So number one is release form. So you got to have a release form.
Another one that's really big is the music you use. So if you use certain intro music, and even if it's commercially licensed, you could still be sued for that. So you have to make sure you get it from a certain platforms are set up properly.
Yeah,
it's really complicated. It's a massive headache.
Yeah. And if you've ever had somebody come after you for pictures on your website, where they're like, "Hey, we see you've been using this picture," and you're like, "No, I had a web company build it, and they got the light." They're like, "Nope. Let me see the license." And they're like, "Yeah, you don't have that." They're like, "Okay, here's the thing. We can sue you and we're going to get $20,000 and we have evidence, or you can give us $2,000 now." I imagine the music probably is pretty similar to that, right?
The exact same process. Yeah. And another one that people run into a lot is the rights to their podcast. Meaning if you're on a podcast network or you have a co-host, the rights to the actual content and the RSS feed is a big deal that people run into all the time.
So what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So let's say you and I have a podcast and I want to take the show a certain path. You want to go another way.
So we're two separate people, two separate businesses. And we just decide to partner up and say, let's do a podcast together. We'll do business and podcasting, and I'll focus on the business side. You'll focus on the podcasting side. We do it. It takes off. And then we decide, no, we want to go separate ways.
Yeah. And then there's a fight right there over the RSS feed. Who owns the content? Who gets
old
to keep
content,
the show?
Right?
Yeah. Who gets to keep the audience that we built over the years? Right. And that happens a lot. It happens consistently. So having an agreement with your co-host when you start a podcast, it's like the show you said you're starting, with the 18-year-old agency owner, it'll be smart to have a legal agreement in place, for something like that, just in case things go awry. You want to be kind of ready for that. And it's the same thing with being on a podcast network. Who owns the content? How much money do you make?
What's a podcast network? What do you mean by that?
So a podcast network is when a bunch of shows are under one umbrella. Mm-hmm. Really, it's easier to monetize that way. I've been able to sell thousands of dollars of sponsorship deals for multiple shows that weren't launched yet because they were on a network. So that's why networks run a lot. And I just think this is important for people to know, because if you are, as a podcaster, putting out this kind of content, oh my God, you just have to have a legal agreement in place when you work with the podcast networks and be able to read and understand what's on there, because they can own your content and you want to leave. They could be withholding funds from you. You want to make sure your percentage are correct. Basically, if they bring in a sponsor for your show, you might get a smaller percentage. Whereas if you find a sponsor, I literally just worked with a podcaster like this. I was trying to get her a sponsorship deal that was 50 times what she had with the network. But in her contract, they wrote it that any sponsorship she gets, they get 50% of it, which is,
just kills the deal, right?
It was horrifying. So it's a lot of legal procedures that you have to be aware of when it comes to podcasting.
Got it. Okay, that was really good, especially the release form. I didn't have you sign a release form, so we'll have a verbal agreement that you're not going to sue me or anything.